So I work at the Pew Center in the States, and I'm really fortunate because Pew does more than just children's work. So actually, to answer the question about, you know, what in this time of economic strife, I think I'm fortunate to be in the Pew Center in the States because the Pew Center in the States was established to help states become high-performing states. We really believe that America's economic success depends upon the states getting their policies right, and that our quality of life really depends upon this, whether it's protecting public safety, educating our children, and ensuring their health, or ensuring a prosperous economic future. The goal of the Pew Center in the States is threefold. One is to efficiently and effectively deliver better results. That isn't just for kids, but just for everybody. It's achieving long-term fiscal health in state budgets through budget discipline. So let's not spend too much money because all of our health depends upon that. But then thirdly, it's on making smart investments in programs that have the strongest results. And of course, that's where most of what I work on fits in. But the Pew Center in the States is something you should know about because as you're looking for ways to save money, we have initiatives at the Pew Center in the States that do that. We have a corrections reform initiative that is saving states literally millions of dollars by helping them look at who really needs to go into prison, who needs to go into some sort of treatment program, who could go on to a really good parole system, how can we make our parole work better? So we're working with states on that. What I would say is let's join hands with other advocates and try to look at, the whole state. Where can we be spending? Where can we be saving? So that we're not just saying spend more, spend more, spend more. Also, I think we need to do a better job ourselves as children's advocates of saying, there are some programs that don't work. I mean, Steve just gave us a good example. We need to make Head Start work better. Now, there's some fabulous Head Start programs out there. You have one here in Alabama. But there's some that aren't very good. My daughter worked in one. And after she'd been volunteering in this program for about two months, she looked at the books and they hadn't been changed in the center. This is where kids were every day for a whole 2 months. And she finally said, I think I'll go to the library and get some new books for the center. And they said, oh no, you don't need to do that. Just go down the hall. We have a library down the hall. So the Head Start teachers hadn't even bothered to go down the hall to get a new collection of books for the children there in the center to work with.
And Libby,
yes,
this is just in defense of you and me, but Libby's background, she came from Head Start. So it's not that Libby is speaking outside of the family or outside of the bubble because she lived and worked and has been invested in Head Start for years.
I love Head Start. Yeah, my most recent job was at Head Start, and I started off as a volunteer in the Head Start program in Austin, Texas. So thank you, Marquita, for pointing out I had to have a Head Start credential. So this next slide will show you, because someone wanted to know where Pew is. Pew really does believe in smart investments for kids. We do think that children are our economic future, that if we don't have well-trained workers, you look out here. This is an amazing place to have a meeting, right? We've arrived. But who's running these amazing businesses out there? It isn't somebody who is off on drugs. It isn't somebody who's dropped out of school. You have to have good workers. And so PreK is one of those great investments. So we're pleased to, because of our investment in PreK and PreK Now and our work here in Alabama, we also have 2 new projects for children. One is on children's dental health. Who would believe that 17 million children don't see a dentist every year? That's 1 in 5 children in this country that don't see a dentist every year. And this is a fixable problem. I mean, getting children to the dentist to get their teeth cleaned and to get cavities filled is something we can fix. So we have an initiative that's working on that. And then I think there's been a little bit of talk already about home visiting. There is some really good evidence out there that home visiting is another intervention similar to PreK, where if you put the money in, you can have incredible results. So the Nurse Family Partnership has the best evidence behind it. And because of the great evidence, actually the President took note of this, and in the health care reform bill, there is $1.5 billion for home visiting. It's going to come out over 5 years, a little bit at a time. Your state has just done an assessment to try to figure out where we have programs, where we don't. But the federal requirement says 75% of the new dollars have to go to programs with the highest evidence base, and 25% of it can go to ones with promising evidence. So we're working with states to try to make sure that they do the same thing with their state dollars. Because state dollars right now, and we just did an inventory of what's happening in home visiting across the country, and the inventory is up on our website, and it shows states don't necessarily know how much they're spending in home visiting, where the money's going, how many families are being served, and they certainly don't know what kind of return they're getting on their investment. So we're going to try to help states spend that state money. We're not asking for more right now because we think it is hard economically to put in money in there. Plus, they're getting some federal money that they weren't expecting. You know, one of the things you've done right here is you've taken a program and made it really high quality, and now you're improving it. It's and expanding it. It's much harder to take a big program like they've done in Florida, where every child is getting it, and it's low quality, and then improve it. So I think you're on the right track. Oh, and then our fourth program, it's a very important program. It's the Partnership for America's Economic Success. And we've had a great partnership here in Alabama, working with you all and with your business community. And what the Partnership for America's Economic Success does is works with any business group. We don't establish our own business groups, because there are incredible business groups out there. There's the Chamber, there's the United Ways, there's the Committee on Economic Development, there's the Business Roundtable. Every state, every community has their different business groups. We're trying to get all of these business groups to start looking at early childhood as an economic development initiative. So with pre-K now, we've worked in over 30 states, including Alabama, a number of other ones, sorry about my voice, a number of other states in the South, because actually in the South we have some of the best pre-K in the whole country. I think, you know, then I think I'll go to the next one. You've heard from Steve, and I think really Steve should be applauded and honored for the incredible work he's done in this area. If you haven't seen their yearbook, and I hope most of you have, because that's where it shows that Alabama gets a 10, they early on set up 10 benchmarks for states to meet. And whenever I see a governor, they say, "Oh, Libby, I'm going to get that next benchmark." You know, because they really have noticed where they are. And Steve has shown that, you know, if you set the standard and then you start comparing states across each other, there's some competition there, and people try to improve that. So we're really pleased to have funded NEAR as part of our initiative. The next slide shows kind of the quality, and Steve alluded to this, but you can see there's pretty good quality across the South. Unfortunately, I'm from Texas, and you can see Texas has poor quality. Florida has even poorer quality. And then there's some states that don't have pre-K at all. Unfortunately, California, Texas, Florida, some of the most populous states aren't doing as well as they need to do. Let's go to the next one. And then that shows the pre-K access. And this is all based on Steve's great data that shows, once again, how the South is doing really, really well, except for, unfortunately, Mississippi, which, you know, you're so fortunate that you all came together and got started, because it's so much harder to do that now, particularly given the economic climate. Let's go back to that state, that slide, actually, because someone asked about where states are doing well. So where are states really doing well? Tell me what you know. Oklahoma. So Oklahoma is one of the best states. They provide pre-K for every 4-year-old. It's done primarily through the public school system, because they got started before we really learned about this diverse delivery system. But as they're expanding, they're using more other settings. What other states doing really well? South Carolina. South Carolina's doing pretty well. They've kind of gotten stalled. They got a really early start with a good governor. Governor Riley really invested a lot in education. They had a Governor Riley years ago. Years and years ago. 10 years ago, or no, more, 15 years ago. He was actually Secretary of Education under Clinton. So their Governor Riley years ago put a really good quality program in place. Unfortunately, it hasn't expanded too much lately, although they're still about 10th in terms of access. Who else is doing well? New Jersey. New Jersey, and that actually came about through court order. That usually doesn't work very well, but New Jersey is a good example. They have one of the highest quality programs. They have one of the best funded programs. It's still a program primarily for low-income children, although they keep expanding that. But they have shown us how you can put a program in place quickly, because they had a court order and they had to do it pretty quickly. So New Jersey is another state that's doing well. What's another state? Georgia. Georgia was one of the very first states. Governor Zell Miller ran on the idea of putting pre-K in place. It's funded through the lottery. It's almost available for every 4-year-old, although there are times when I hear that families have to stand in line or they're not able to get their child in a program. Any other states? West Virginia. West Virginia did a wonderful job, and this is where I would like to see you go. They put pre-K in the school funding formula. So, and they said the school districts have 10 years to get it in place. So they gave their schools a long window for putting pre-K in place. They said that over 50% of them had to be in community-based settings. So slowly but surely, over the last 9 years, I think they only have 2 years left, or 1 year left, they have been putting pre-K in place district by district. And when you do it that way, the early adopters, we have a superintendent that really gets it, they'll go out there and get it going, and then the other people start following. But West Virginia is another good example. What other states? Florida. Florida's an interesting example. They did it through ballot initiative. And it called for a high-quality program. They had a vote. They passed overwhelmingly. Then they got a committee together. They set high standards. Then it had to go to the legislature. The legislature lowered the standard and underfunded the program. And we keep using Florida, unfortunately, as an example of don't do it that way. Because what they've done is they have what I would call maybe high-quality child care, but it's certainly not what I would call pre-K. And you saw from Steve's slide that if you don't have quality, you don't really get the returns on the investment that you want.
What about Vermont?
Vermont, of course, is an easier state because it's so small, and Vermont is interesting because they serve almost all 3- and 4-year-olds. They put in place a cap, so they said you could only serve 50. It turns out to be 50% of the 3s and 50% of the 4s about. So we're trying to remove that cap. But if you think about 50% of the 3s and 50% of the 4s, that's a lot of kids. I mean, that's a large percentage. So Vermont has really moved the issue. And they've done it with the help of the business community. So once again, the business community has really been critical. I was talking to someone about Florida today, and I think one of the problems in Florida is they haven't gotten the business community behind them. So getting that business support is really critical. What other states?
How about North Carolina?
North Carolina. We've heard a lot about North Carolina for a long time because of Jim Hunt. He was the governor a long time ago. He ran for a second term, came back. He was gone and then he came back and ran for governor strictly with the idea of improving the early childhood education there. And he put Smart Start in place. How many of you all have heard of Smart Start? Yeah. So it's a wonderful program. It's improved child care primarily. Then you got another governor, and a governor of the same party. So this shows you a little bit about politics, that even when you get a governor of the same party, they still compete with each other. So the new governor, instead of expanding Smart Start and improving that, he put More at 4 in place, which is their pre-K program. And recently, I think just this week or last week, an evaluation was done on the North Carolina More at 4 program that shows it is a high quality and program that's making incredible difference in children's lives. But it's interesting because you have these two competing programs and some competition actually between More at 4 and Smart Start in a state where you really shouldn't have that.
Libby,
One more state.
when they talk about Oklahoma and the number, universal, what really is universal? Is it really 30% of the children, 40% of the children?
Well, I wouldn't use, Marquita asked what is universal. I wouldn't use the term universal because our pollster told us early on that universal implies, it doesn't mean the same thing, but it makes people think of mandatory. And you know what? No one wants anything mandatory for young kids. So we use the word pre-K for all. We even try to throw in the word voluntary because we want parents to know, you have a choice. I mean, when I look at my little 3-year-old who just turned 3, Clara, and think, golly, she goes to, of course, a pre-K program. But if she weren't in one, she needs one. And the fact that people don't think these young kids need to get together in a setting where they can learn together and play together, and even moms at home. I was a stay-at-home mom. I was getting my PhD, but I needed a break, and I certainly needed them to play with some different toys. Anyway, so we don't use universal. We use pre-K for all, voluntary pre-K for all. Steve would probably be better at answering this, but what we would consider a state that has universal or pre-K for all is one that has made a commitment that every 4-year-old in this state has access. And so that has, I think it's happened mostly in Oklahoma, although I hear, Steve, that in Oklahoma, even some kids, there's some districts that maybe don't offer it yet, maybe just a few.
There may be a couple.
Maybe a couple, but it's most. And then I think in Georgia there has been a little bit of problems. They say we think they have it, but there are problems because some kids don't get it. I think in states that have, like Oklahoma, that have access for all kids, you still, if you count a Head Start, you count IDEA, you count your pre-K program, 80% is about as high as you're going to get, maybe a little bit higher. But there are some families that want to keep their kids at home, or they put them in a program that is not a part of the pre-K system. Okay, let's go on. So this is why we want to celebrate, is the state's investments in pre-K have more than doubled. So it does show that if you focus on something, and Pew as a foundation really focused on this, you can make a difference. So we went from $2.4 billion in 2001 and 2 to $5.3 billion in 2008 and 9. Now 400,000 more children are enrolled in state-funded pre-K. That's a 63% increase since 2002. So it just shows if you can focus, it obviously took some money. It took some really smart people, a lot of those people in this room and in other states all across this country. But together we focused. We said what we wanted, we were very clear, and we made a difference. And you've done that here in this state. Next. So you were talking about states that did it well. We talked in place where we say pre-K for every 4-year-old, we say Florida, Georgia, and Oklahoma. As a goal, we have that in New York, West Virginia, Illinois, Iowa, Louisiana, and D.C. And that doesn't mean the funding is there. They've just said they've made a commitment, and some of those states even have a deadline of a certain year to have it in place. What we'd like to see, and someone asked the question about the aha. I mean, it's not the aha, but it's like, this is, if I had my dream, this is what it would be to put pre-K in the school funding formula. So, just the way kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 12th grade are all funded, I would like to see pre-K funded that way. And that's how it's done in Maine, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, D.C., and West Virginia. Even in Texas, they do it that way, but they cap it. You have to be at 185% of poverty. Same thing in Colorado. So put it in the school funding formula. It protects it. It's there that if it gets cut, it gets cut, but it gets cut because all of education is getting cut. Because when it's out there by itself, it has a tendency to be really, really vulnerable. Because you know what? It's so easy to cut young kids because it's really easy to do.
Libby, when it's in the formula, are any of them mixed delivery or all of them?
When it's in the formula, it can be mixed delivery. It started off with Oklahoma because they did it early, not being so much mixed delivery, but West Virginia is a very good example. They said in their law 50% had to be in community-based settings, and they have far exceeded that. So there are ways to do that. It ties it. Someone asked about how do you tie pre-K to the K-12 system. Well, this is one way to do it, tie the funding together. Even in Texas, where they only serve the children at 185% of poverty, foster care kids, military children, and a few other groups. And when I went to the union meeting of the teachers, some of the pre-K people there were their school reps. It's so tied in with all of the K-12 system. These people, they do their in-service together. They're considered teachers, and it's not this separate system. To answer that question also, to give you a little bit more information, one of the great districts in this country is Montgomery County, which is just outside of D.C. And Jerry Wiest, the superintendent there, he told me, he said, "Libby, make me your poster boy for pre-K." And we've kind of tried to do that. We just recently released a report on how they have integrated their pre-K system into their K-12 system. And it's really an interesting story because Jerry tells us that, he looked at where he wanted his kids to be in 12th grade. And he worked backwards and looked at when they had to take algebra, when they had to do all these things. And he said, you know what, we can't do it if we just start in kindergarten. And so that's how he got to pre-K. And so they've really, really worked with their Head Start program, integrating that in, and pulled it in together into a comprehensive system. And we have a book or a small report that's pretty easy to read. It's well written and tells their story. Okay, so what's ahead? I think this, the woman who asked about the challenging times, I think it is going to be challenging times. I think Head Start's going to be under attack because people can read the research, and we're promoting research, and the research isn't that great. I'm glad that they've agreed to recompete the bottom 25%. We all need to get in there and help. Every Head Start program. How many of you are a part of Head Start? We need to make your programs. You need to reach out. You need to make your program one of the great programs. And we all need to be reaching out and helping our Head Start programs make sure that they're not in the bottom 25%, because we really want Head Start to be the shining light that it needs to be. But I think Head Start will be under attack. We have the ESEA, which is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or Bush renamed it No Child Left Behind. It should have been reauthorized a few years ago. It was supposed to be reauthorized this year. It keeps getting put off because it's quite a big act. I don't know that the Republicans and the Democrats in D.C. can agree on it. It needs to be reauthorized because there's some things that aren't as good. It certainly doesn't talk about children younger than kindergarten, except just very peripherally. You can use Title I for children under the age of kindergarten. You can use it to pay for pre-K. You can use it to pay for home visiting. You can use your Title I, and we actually have a brief on it. But we would like to see, when it's reauthorized, some ties to early childhood, because we think this is education. This is the most important education act in our country. And if it doesn't talk about early education, then we're really missing out, and so is our country, because we know now that is the first step in school reform. It needs to be a basic foundation that every child gets. I think we're going to have hard times, but we've been able to hold our own, and I think the best way to do that is by getting the business community involved, and by saying, let's not do across-the-board cuts. Across-the-board cuts don't work because they cut everything. And we need to start being able to point out programs that do work and programs that don't work. And we need to be even in our own field. And that's awfully hard. But even in schools, we need to be able to look at and help principals realize, maybe the way they've used their Title I funding for a long time, there's still Title I has gone to the same thing forever and ever. Maybe that's not based on the best research. So I think, it's going to be tough. We're going to see Head Start under fire. I don't think we're going to see more money in child care for a long time. It's certainly been hard to improve the quality of child care. I think we will see child care getting the QRIS systems continue to get in place. Those have to have money behind it. I mean, just setting higher standards without money to help people reach those standards, it's not fair, and it won't work. So, you know, that is a long road ahead. I mean, your challenge is you have a new governor. You have a lot of people that are new in the House and Senate here. So it's an opportunity too, because these people don't know that much about what you do. And so you need to make sure that every elected official in your area has come and seen your program. And I like to tell the story that I got from a senator in Arkansas. It's so great. He was the leader of the Senate. He didn't know much about their program in Arkansas. Arkansas has a good program, by the way. He kept getting calls. He got a call, you know, come visit our PreK program, and you know he was busy, and he kept saying no. Well, they had to ask him, invite him 5 times before he finally agreed to go visit the program. It has to be a program in his. It had to be a program in his district. He wasn't going to go just to any old program, but he had to be a program in his district. So he tells the story about going into the program, and of course, who does he notice? Who does he notice? The children. The grandchildren weren't there, but their children. And what are our children? Our children are beautiful. I mean, have you ever seen a child that you just didn't fall in love with? I mean, they're so darling. They're so cute. They're smiling. They're touching his suit. They're really, you know, eager. They're kind of interested in his suit. He, of course, sits down in this little tiny chair, and the children are gathered around him. I have a photo of him sitting in that chair. And he reads them a story. The teachers are there, of course, and they're primed, you know, to talk to him about what the children are learning, and that this is play, but the way the children learn is through play. They shouldn't be sitting at desks. They shouldn't be doing worksheets. They should be playing with the blocks and in the you know, the housekeeping center and dramatic play center, reading books. And and the parents are there. There's some parents there that are there that really tell the story as well as how they're involved and what a difference it's made in their lives. So then he goes back to the Senate. He's pretty committed after that. It really did make him an advocate. But a couple of weeks later, a page brings in a note. It says he has some visitors. So I wasn't expecting any visitors, but he goes out, and there are the children and the teachers, and they came to visit and gave him a thank you note. And then a couple weeks later, he gets a photograph and some of the drawings. And so he tells his story, and he ended up. Unfortunately, they have term limits in Arkansas, so he's not still in the Senate. But it made a believer out of him, and that's what you can do. You can have your elected officials come into your programs, see the amazing things that you're doing. These are our elected officials. Don't be scared of them. And Gerald Stribling, Gerald's not here. Gerald, are you here? She told a story this morning that I thought was good. And then I'll conclude, because I thought this was a great one. She says, every member has either children or grandchildren. And so when you go into their office or when you talk to them, ask them, you know, do you have grandchildren? Do you have children? What kind of pre-K program did they go to? And you will immediately make a bond, and they can tell you about the program that their children go to. And then they can start relating to what an amazing difference that has made in their children's lives and their grandchildren's lives, and so what a difference you're making in their lives. So really, I just want to salute what you've done. I want you to keep doing it. Don't stop now. Make the case. And and continue to work together, because I think that has been the strength of Alabama. Thank you.